The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. All right. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Tuesday, May 6th, and today is National Teacher Appreciation Day. It's also National Foster Care Day.
Hold on one second. Go ahead.
And it's also National Crepe Suzette Day today, you guys.
Okay.
There we go. There we go. We got this together over here?
Well, people keep dropping in and out, so just waiting for everybody to catch up.
All right, fair. All right, there we go. There we go, you guys. Oh, let me get back to my script. It's also National Crepe Suzette Day, National Beverage Day, and National Nurses Day. So shout out to all the nurses out there across the world, helping, poking and prodding and sticking IVs and all these things and keeping everybody healthy and tying up all those tourniquets. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Speaking of nurses, your favorite nurse? Out your mouth.
Yes. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And we are kicking it off with Jenny Beth Dills. She is the founder of Kind Cannabis, a consulting company that can help you stay on track, whether that be the Met track or the Bio track, as well as the founder of Justice Served, a 501c3 that helps justice impaired individuals. That's right, it is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills. I'm sorry, I don't have the hand clapper here, you guys. I'm sorry, I'm not in studio today, so I apologize. I have no hand claps. There we go.
And the crowd goes down.
Yes.
That was a good one, actually. Okay. Finally, some movement in Minnesota. Minnesota has officially set the date for its cannabis license lottery. The state's Office of Cannabis Management says the highly anticipated lottery will take place on June the 5th. For social equity and general applicants seeking 3 key license types: cannabis cultivator, manufacturer, and mesobusiness. These license categories are considered critical to building the foundation of Minnesota's legal cannabis supply chain. A second lottery for cannabis retailer licenses, including a second chance for social equity applicants, will follow in July. A mesobusiness license allows for a wide range of activities, including cultivation, concentrate production and manufacturing cannabis or hemp products, including artificially derived cannabinoids, which is interesting. OCM Interim Director Eric Tobel says the office is prioritizing the supply chain to help ensure a responsible rollout that protects public health, fosters consumer trust, and promotes equity in the cannabis industry. The license application lotteries will be live streamed on the OCM's YouTube channel, and results will be posted online and shared directly with applicants. This milestone is part of Minnesota's broader strategy to phase in its adult use cannabis program, with the market expected to mature over the next several years. Application review began with license types limited by statute, such as cultivators and manufacturers, and will continue. Jess Jackson, the OCM's Director of Social Equity, says many social equity applicants are already deep in the process and getting closer to launching their businesses. More applicants are expected to advance the lotteries in the coming weeks. So interesting. They finally set a date. We'll see how this rollout happens. I think that it's a good idea that they're, allowing the producers to license first, because the retailers would not have any product to sell otherwise. I do think it's interesting that they're allowing hemp and artificially derived cannabinoids for the mezzo businesses. So I'll throw it back to you guys, but Minnesota is finally moving forward, allegedly.
Well, no, I think the reason that they're allowing for these hemp products and whatnot, Jenny Beth, is due to the fact that they've had such a big push on the hemp beverages, because this is the same state that's allowing for hemp beverages to be sold in Total Wine and Spirits, and you know what I'm saying, everywhere else.
Well, I also think that it was foresight, because look at every other state's crying about the artificially derived cannabinoids and how it's not fair, and how you could just be all willy-nilly without a license, and you have to pay exorbitant fees and taxes if you're in the licensed cannabis space. And so they went ahead and cut that through. What that also does, if there's a pathway to licensure, right? Because I can get a license to grow however many plants, right, or how many lights full, I probably can't go to my house and throw 100 lights up anymore and justify that, right? Same thing with the artificially derived cannabinoids. If there's a licensed pathway to produce those products, then that actually is going to kick down harder as well on people who are doing that in an inappropriate fashion.
Yep, fair enough. Michael, you have any thoughts?
Is the dumbest way to award licenses. Just so stupid, right? I mean, you do all the work, you do all the pre-work, you fill out the applications, you hire the lawyers, you get your building. Then if you're lucky enough to get picked out of a bucket, right, then you get a license. So stupid.
How do you recommend them do it?
Oh, it's got to be merit-based.
Yeah.
See, I feel that when they do it merit based on that metric or tested on the grid, it just gives higher priority for these self-proclaimed judges of people's futures to be able to choose their friends.
Well, and I mean, here's the problem with any licensing system, whether it's a lottery or it's merit-based, somebody's going to be folding their arms and stomping their feet at the end. Look at Florida, for example. They just did another lottery, or another merit-based application round, and there's now a lawsuit. So everything that was issued prior to the first 22 are now held up in litigation because 23 says, hey, we missed it by a point. Let me have my license.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we've gone through litigation a few times in the state of Florida regarding it. I'm kind of mixed on the issue. I think most states use lottery for alcohol and then allow them to sell it. My issue is the merit-based system, I think, is a scam in most ways. You have these random people that are judging, is someone who's growing in organic soil better than someone who's growing in a hydroponic method? I just think that it's a big problem, and I think that it creates more problems. The lottery system, I agree, doesn't help. I mean, and if it's like Kentucky's, I don't know if you guys watched that at all, where it becomes a joke. I think the lottery system is probably the only fair way for exactly as Jason mentioned, and I think we're seeing this in state after state, especially the big operators who can go in there and say, hey, I have experience in these 10 different states running cannabis operations. They're going to be scored higher, and it continues to drop out the mom and pop for a plant. And not that I'm opposed to big business, I at least think small businesses should have an opportunity to get into the space. And in a lot of these states, unlike anything else, we're free market Florida, except in the cannabis industry. Operators aren't having the ability. It's anti-capitalism. And I prefer a lottery system, honestly, a clear lottery system that's fair, doesn't become rigged like Kentucky's did. and really issues those licenses with people meeting minimum standards. I think that's how these licenses should go, because otherwise it just becomes corruption and politics, I think.
But what other industry offers a lottery system to go into business? Right?
Well, just alcohol. In Florida, if alcohol licenses are given, they usually all cities or towns have a certain amount, and the state issues them. And when they go back to the state, they will issue a lottery for those licenses, and entities get to. Otherwise, you're purchasing them, for X amount, depending on the price. In Miami, it may be millions of dollars for an alcohol license, and smaller towns, it may be $50,000. So they've created a number of licenses that they think are reasonable, and then they distribute those through lottery and or through, private sales.
Don't forget, Todd, the lottery's in every state.
Here he goes.
Lottery's not in Nevada.
Oh, fair enough. There is no lottery in Nevada, but you guys have Keno in every casino. That's the same thing.
That's true.
Well, there we have it.
And there we have it.
At least, it's another state moving forward, I think, with getting something done.
I mean, we'll see how fast they actually get things done. I mean, this all sounds good, but I'm willing to bet that there's going to be some type of lawsuits that come into play that end up holding this up all day.
There always is.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just gruntled non-lottery winners.
Exactly. Or maybe they're just keeping up with the Joneses. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the Jensen. All right. Well, anyhow.
Fair enough. Since I am not in studio, I cannot play the commercial, but we are going to roll to our first commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, And I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Test it. It's not a name, it's a promise. We are back, everybody.
All right, you guys, coming up next, we have the High at 9 head honcho. We all stand a head taller than him, but he is the boss, Jason Beck.
Stop it, Jenny. That is so ridiculous. You see this show.
Funny because it's true. Funny because it's true.
Sure, Yarrow is a head taller.
Oh, boy. You guys.
Yarrow's not here today, so he doesn't count.
Sure.
No.
Well, I'm definitely a head taller.
yeah. That's fair. That's fair, Todd. I think that's fairly fair. Man, let me tell you something. We've been following this story, you guys, out there in Mississippi, because a fight over marijuana ads in Mississippi hits Supreme Court. You guys, Supreme Court on Monday declined to take up a challenge to Mississippi's near total restriction on the advertising of medical marijuana. Mississippi voters overwhelmingly approved medical marijuana in 2020, but the state tightly controls how the product can be promoted. The owner of a cannabis dispensary argues that violates his free speech rights, and Clarence Crepe, owner of True Source Medical Cannabis, wants to advertise on 4 billboards he owns. Advertising is needed, he said, because his dispensary is tucked away in an industrial park where people aren't likely to see it. In a quote, he says, "I was hoping the Supreme Court would hear our case so my business could be treated like any other legal business in the state of Mississippi," Cocroft said in a statement. The New Orleans-based Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals said that Crepe didn't have a First Amendment right to advertise his business because marijuana is still illegal under federal law. The Biden administration moved to reclassify marijuana as a less dangerous drug, but that effort has stalled, just like Sleepy Joe Biden. Even if the change goes through, it would still be a controlled substance, and the federal government would need to decide when marijuana could be prescribed for medical purposes. But only a handful of states have a complete prohibition on marijuana, and for years, the federal government has had various rules about not challenging states' more permissive laws. First Amendment limbo, the Institute for Justice, which represented Crocroft, argued. Mississippi, which waived its right to respond to Crocroft's request that the Supreme Court hear his appeal, doesn't allow marijuana to be advertised through billboards, newspapers, television, social media, or email lists. And Arkansas and Alabama likewise have similar restrictions, according to the Institute for Justice, and in quotes, an outright ban on all medical cannabis advertising, said the Institute's Karen Marquez, serves no legitimate public purpose. I personally totally agree on that, and I wish the Supreme Court would have said this, and I would have loved to see what Justice Clarence Thomas had to say about this, but I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
You saying you're for or against advertising?
No, I'm for the advertising. I wish the Supreme Court would have taken this up, because I would have loved to hear what the arguments were made, and I would have loved to see the justice's opinion. I wish they would have taken up this case, because I think that he actually does have a right to be able to advertise his business, since they're making it legal in the state. I think I don't think you can point to really any other state that has said we're going to legalize this, but you can't advertise this.
In Nevada, there's billboards everywhere. I mean, literally billboards everywhere. They're on taxi cabs, literally everywhere. And I think it's good for the industry. It normalizes it. Right?
Exactly.
It makes the parent have the conversation with the kid. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of the advertising, and restricting it is a First Amendment thing. It's just a dumb rule thing.
What were you saying, Michael?
Yeah, I was going to say we have the same kind of issues here in Florida. MMTCs really aren't allowed to advertise at all. We had one that gotten fined for they were the prime sponsor on a title sponsor on an event, a cannabis conference, and it was whatever the dispensary was, sponsors, Florida Cannabis Coalition or whatever, and they got fined for that. But yet doctors can put their marijuana leaves on benches and things of that nature, and the hemp companies. And they tried to pass a bill here in Florida for the hemp companies to restrict their advertising as well. But same with them. They are allowed to put marijuana leaves up on billboards and stuff as hemp companies and doctors, but not the dispensary. I agree. I think it should be a violation of the First Amendment in commercial speech. And, it's really sad, because I think it sets precedent by the Supreme Court not taking it, that other states, if they want to, can follow this pattern and do the exact same thing. And I would easily see Florida doing it. I mean, if it could get any more restrictive, which I really can't, they can only really have signs outside their actual physical locations here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think this hey, we're allow you to have a business, but you can't advertise it, and when we have people when we have direct to consumer sales happening within the hemp space is kind of really kind of asinine, because at the end of the day it's all THCA.
Yes.
Well, I think it's also asked backwards. I think it's asked backwards that doctors can advertise, right? Like, I think when you're looking at Florida, that was the pill mill state, right? Now they're all writing cannabis regs. So I think that if you are going to advertise commercial activity, it should be commercial activity. It shouldn't be a doctor. We can go online and find a doctor. That's not difficult. Everybody knows how to do that. So, I don't know. Weed does not sell itself. You have to find it first.
Yeah, right. Well, good weed sells itself, Jenny, but it is a mixed
not if you
market.
can't get to the store, Jason.
Yeah, clearly the doctors have a better lobby than the retailers.
Oh, that's true. I mean, the cannabis lobby is so pathetic. The nail polish industry has a better lobby than the cannabis industry does.
Well, advertising is something that we really need to all get behind and continue to push. It continues like the banking issue with the normalization of cannabis. You know, kind of like they have no problem with drug commercial after drug commercial on TV.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Between your doctor.
Because anal bleeding and
right. So it's a travesty the Supreme Court didn't take this up.
Yeah, hopefully, possibly it'll get challenged in another state or whatnot. I think they mentioned Alabama in this article as well. So we'll see if another state takes it up, and then all of a sudden, you know, we start building the pressure and building the, you know what I'm saying? Just got to keep pressure on these guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we on that. Yeah. And on that, we are going to keep this train rolling. We are going to roll right on in to attorney at law, Mr. Michael Minardi. Mr. Michael Minardi is an attorney from the great red state of Florida who has been fighting for patients' rights and legalization of cannabis for over the past 15 years. Representing his law firm, Minardi Law, it is none other than Mr. Michael Minardi.
Happy high noon to everybody here on the East Coast. So we are there. So what I'm going into today is a little bit of psychedelics because, you know, in addition to cannabis, anything that comes from the earth is something that I believe that should be legalized and not criminalized. So as usual, Colorado is moving forward on that, and Colorado House approved, the Senate passed a bill to allow pardons and implement data tracking. So Colorado House lawmakers have advanced a Senate-passed bill that would empower the governor to grant pardons to people who have been convicted of psychedelic-related offenses and implementation of rules for data tracking for the state's 2022 voter-approved psychedelics legalization law. They passed the House on Monday, and a final vote is on the third reading is expected soon, which it's my understanding the governor already said he will sign. It's going to help track data related to psilocybin use, outcomes from healing centers, and hospital admissions from police data. This is helpful in terms of how to create policy. A sponsor told his colleagues, we passed in 2022 the ability to use psilocybin. This will help collect data so we can make better policy decisions. And this is another one of those plants that is a Schedule I substance, whereas fentanyl, as we all recall, is a Schedule II substance. If enacted, it would authorize the governor or future governors to grant clemency to people with convictions for low-level possession of substances, such as psilocybin, ibogaine, DMT, that have been since legalized for adults. It would also require the Colorado Department of Health and Environment, Department of Revenue, and Department of Regulatory agencies to collect information and data related to the use of natural medicine and natural medicine products. This would include data on law enforcement activities, adverse health events, consumer protection claims, and behavioral impacts related to psychedelics. I wonder if that will include couples getting along better and having better relationships. What this bill does is sets up a mechanism to collect health information, which would give us the data to see whether or not natural medicine, as it's rolled out, has adverse health effects or beneficial health impacts. Senator Matt Ball, a state sponsor, said during discussion on the measure last week. It's interesting. Fish has been playing dicks there for the last 15 years. They should hand out those at that show. One amendment approved. A Senate committee removed government appropriation to pay for data collecting and tracking. It gets paid out of donations and grants and nonprofit organizations. The bill in the current form would earmark $208,000 towards Governor's Office of Information Technology to implement this act and provide for a better public health information regarding these substances. The legislation would further amend rules around licensing and ownership of psychedelic healing centers. For example, it removes a requirement for background checks for owners and employees of licensed facilities, making so that they could be subject to name-based criminal background checks. In addition, it requires state licensing authority to adopt rules related to product labels for regulating natural medicine and regulating natural medicine products, and permits the state licensing authority to adopt rules regulating the types of medicine and products that can be manufactured. The proposal overall has a lot of support, and it seems like it is going to pass both sides. Meanwhile, last month, the governor signed into bill a law that would allow psilocybin to be prescribed as a medication if the federal government authorized its use. While Colorado already legalized psilocybin and several other psychedelics for adults 21 and older through voter-approved ballot initiatives, the newly enacted reform will make so drugs containing an isolized, crystallized version can become available under physician prescription medication. This continues to push the envelope on psychedelics through the country as more and more studies come out to show the benefits of its use for PTSD and depression. We're really excited to see this continued expansion and involvement, and hope to see that Colorado can set forth the facts that can support further support and reform in state after state, as Florida has recently looked to and passed legislation to criminalize spores, which is going to be one of the first states that I know of doing so.
Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. I mean, Jenny Beth, you've spent so much time in Colorado. What do you think about this?
I think Colorado's been on the forefront of everything. If we look at the progress that's been made with, adult use cannabis, everything there, it's been Colorado in the lead, even ketamine clinics, right? So when we're looking at that, unfortunately, Michael, they're going to have to hand those brochures up at Folsom Field because Fish has finally left Dick's, which is an end of an era, but very, very, a lot of fun times had there. I did my first Dick's run 6 months pregnant with Parker, so we had a blast. But yeah, no, I think that progress in Colorado is not something that surprises me, and I applaud them for actually being able to, except for in Colorado Springs, enact the will of the people for the most part.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just can imagine. I think this is going to be great for the church of cannabis out there that Steve Burke has over there in Denver. Because I don't know if you've ever been there, but like their whole psychedelic approach when you walk inside is very, very psychedelic and super, super trippy when they do their whole little service with their light show and everything else like that. I can just imagine this is going to be very, very interesting to watch these developments in Colorado.
Oh man, that place is, my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a great place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Todd?
Yeah, I think any kind of positive movement forward for psilocybin and other plant-based psychedelics is good. And like Jenny, I applaud Colorado for taking the appropriate steps, right, to allow folks to get the help that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think with anything, it's about knowledge and education, and this actually enables and gives people in real world aspects the ability to chime in on their, experiences and effects of it. We had a meeting with a county commissioner regarding psychedelics, and we had a bunch of veterans with us, and they're talking, and she's like, well, aren't you just seeing little things running around? Like they really believe that you hallucinate and are, things are just conjured out of nowhere, like you're watching a Disney cartoon or something. Don't understand the perspective of it. So I think that this will continue to give us oversight as we push towards more freedom and the ability to take over our health, both mental and physical health, through using nature.
Mm-hmm.
I always say that good education creates good legislation.
That's very true, Todd. That is super true. I totally believe that. That makes a lot of sense. And look at this, Jenny. We're making really, really good on time today.
Yeah, I'm efficient.
Look at this. Look at this. And on
today,
that,
Jenny?
and on this, we are going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back.
and should be very interesting. But I hear they're going to be back to Dick's next year.
And we are back, you guys. Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it. And YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highatnightnews.com.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's Joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi. And we are back, you guys.
And next we're going down to Las Vegas for the golden voice and the bald head, who has a little competition on the show for that position now. So bringing it to Mr. Todd Denkin, the founder of Digipath Labs and the Smoggleverse.
Thank you very much. Thank you. As the crowd goes wild, I get that a lot, right? I go places, so I keep the applause sound effects with me. How's it going, everybody? Happy Tuesday. And I have an interesting story based on drunk driving or stone driving. Now know which one is more dangerous based on highway data. So is it more dangerous to drive drunk or drive when you're high on marijuana? Well, alcohol is found to be more dangerous for the road than weed. So how do drunk and stone drivers differ on the road, and why are drunk drivers more dangerous? Well, despite the numerous warnings that one must not drive after drinking alcohol, people still continue to do it. Drinking alcohol is still so widely accepted in society today, and people don't realize how much it contributes to so many preventable problems like motor vehicle accidents. Despite the warnings and accidents, alcohol is still the #1 and most frequently detected substance found among drivers of motor vehicle collisions. According to data, alcohol is also still the greatest threat to road safety. Canadian research analyzed the blood work of more than 8,300 drivers who were involved in motor vehicle accidents. More than half of the individuals studied tested positive for a controlled substance, which was likely depressants, alcohol, or marijuana. Cannabis was found to be the most common among drivers in a younger subset, ages 19 to 24. However, those who did test positive for THC were suspected to have been exposed to it days or hours before they hit the road, since the concentration was so little. After all, it is known that cannabis lingers in the blood for days, as many as 30 days after the last exposure. Just approximately 3% of participants were found to possess elevated levels of THC in the blood, or THC greater than 5 nanograms per milliliter. These statistics suggest that although more drivers test positive for THC, alcohol remains the greatest threat to road safety, included the study's authors. There is data and research to back up the fact that alcohol is much more of a hazard on the road than weed is. Several reasons contribute to it. One, alcohol is responsible for about 25% of all fatalities caused by motor vehicle accidents. Data also shows that drivers with elevated blood alcohol concentrations have a major increased risk when it comes to crashes. Just a blood alcohol concentration of 0.08% or more already leads to significant impairment when it comes to reaction time, coordination, and judgment, resulting in more accidents on the road. Additionally, research shows that drivers who are impaired by cannabis and alcohol have different behavior. Example, alcohol-impaired judgment leads drivers to take a bigger risk with speeding, ignoring traffic rules, and weaving, to name a few. Drunk drivers have also exhibited a difficulty to concentrate on several driving tasks at the same time. On the other hand, marijuana may impair one's perception of speed and time, as well as attentiveness, cannabis users exhibit more caution and awareness while driving. Consuming marijuana products that contain THC is well known for its ability to induce paranoia and anxiety in some people. This could actually be a good thing if you're driving. Cannabis users who have to drive are much more aware of their limitations while behind the wheel, and this can encourage them to act much more cautiously and drive slowly. There's a major contrast here with alcohol, a substance that is notorious for making drivers overconfident and resulting in risky driving behaviors. There are studies that even show how marijuana users typically drive at a speed that is below the speed limit. They also tend to keep a good distance from other vehicles. Many drivers also report feeling more confident and being better drivers, in spite of or because of their cannabis habit. Driving impaired by anything in general is something that we really don't advocate. Many, cannabis use brings no change at all. That's right, seasoned cannabis users can drive without any issues on the road. And for some, cannabis use brings about no change. This has also been recorded in studies. Data from one study, which was published in the Journal of Cannabis Research in 2024, revealed that subjects demonstrated little changes in driving performance after consuming THC edibles. Researchers from the University of Toronto analyzed driving behavior among 22 participants who were frequent users of cannabis for recreational purposes. Before and after the consumption of the THC edibles that contain 7.3 milligrams of THC on average, then analyzed the driving performance of subjects 2, 4, and then 6 hours after. Compared to the baseline, cannabis edibles produced a decrease in mean speed 2 hours after consumption. No changes in standard deviation of lateral position, such as weaving, maximum speed, standard deviation of speed, or reaction time were found at any point in time. However, some of the subjects were hesitant to drive after they ingested cannabis. This is the first study of the impact of cannabis edibles on simulated driving, the authors concluded. Future studies will need to control for age and determine any age-related impacts on the effects of cannabis on driving. This is especially important given that participants over the age of 50 years have been overlooked in studies the effects of cannabis on driving and related outcomes. And at 9 News, we don't advocate for driving under the influence of anything. Yet, cannabis users who have developed a tolerance to the drug after months or even years of regular consumption seem like they are less likely of a threat on the road compared to drinkers. No matter how long they've been drinking, never get better at it on the road. It's likely tolerance combined with biology and learned caution makes stone drivers less risky while driving. Just be cautious of the very real dangers involved with any substance before you drive. I'm Todd Denkin with High at 9 News, and how many of you have already smoked and driven this morning?
Oh, yeah.
Love that study.
Yeah, I don't think Michael's gonna admit to anything like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I walked to my office, so I'm good.
There you go.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So that's perfect.
Fair enough.
But
I mean, you know, go ahead, Todd,
I'm
please.
just going to say, I really agree. You know, most people who smoke pot and drive always say that it makes them a better driver because they're more cautious, they're more focused, you know, they're whatever. A funny story, wife was really high before she was my wife. She got really high and she was hanging out and driving with her friend. And the friend looked over and said, you know, why are we going so slow? And she looked down and she was sitting with her legs crossed on the seat. Like she didn't even have the pedals on her feet on the gas pedal. Right. So I've heard stories like that where cars are whizzing by. Right. But overall, I think it doesn't hurt at all, especially when
to your point, Todd, that's interesting because there was a study that I was aware of. I think it was out of Michigan or Minnesota, and they did a study in comparison with driving and on alcohol and driving on cannabis. And basically their findings were that alcohol causes you to speed and act erratically, as opposed to where cannabis causes you to maybe go a little bit slower. You may take a little bit of more of a prolonged stop at the stop sign or things like that. But you don't. The cannabis smokers, drivers don't experience the same type of erratic behavior that comes along with alcohol, where it's all gas and no brakes.
There's the old joke, you know, what's the difference between a stone driver and a drunk driver? Now, a drunk driver runs right through the stop sign. Stone driver waits for the stop sign to turn green.
Yes. Oh, I do remember that. I remember that as a kid, hearing that. That's for sure.
You know, and this is consistent with study after study regarding this. I remember reading a study a few years ago that compared, especially experienced cannabis consumers to it being the difference of between driving between day and night. And as you know, I don't know if you know, but daylight savings time of the year, when we turn our clocks back, that's like when kind of the most accidents happen. Is during that period of time a little bit. There's an uptick in it because of that change from day to night. So I think it's great. We have only a few different DUI cases. We're starting to get a few of them here. Florida had a get baked, get busted, don't drive while you're high, $5 million billboard propaganda after we passed medical marijuana. In most cases that I've dealt with have gotten thrown out because it's impossible, especially they're doing the regular roadside tests for alcohol to show that people are impaired.
I find it interesting that they're running an anti-pot campaign on billboards, but you can't advertise for a dispensary. What?
Yeah, right?
Is that about?
Yep.
Very, very true. Any thoughts on this, Beth?
I mean, I think there's levels to it, right? So, like, impairment as defined by the law could include you're too tired to be driving, right? So, like, if you haven't had a whole lot of experience with cannabis, I probably wouldn't encourage you to take a 0.5 gram dab and go jump behind the wheel and go pick the kids up. Jason, however, is just intolerable to everyone if he's not high. So, I think those things are love you, buddy. Are important. But yeah, I think there's levels to it, and I think that we need to have a reasonable way to quantify it as opposed to just a blanket, you can't do it, right? People are prescribed a Xanax every day and drive.
Oh, yeah. And that's
like the article says, it's about tolerance and biology, right? We're all different. It all affects us differently. And, I guess you can't make laws for individuals, right? You have to make blanket laws, right? So, but it should be, because there's no accurate way to really do a field test, sobriety test for weed. How else do you test it other than a physical sobriety test?
Yeah, and especially with urine too. So what they'll usually do is make the person do a urine, but the urine only detects the inactive metabolite in your system, so it doesn't show impairment. So it creates a big problem for that issue. But just like any other drug in Florida, it's DUI if your alcohol level is over 0.08, or then under any other substance, the extent your normal faculties are impaired. And like, she said, could be Xanax, could be opiates, it could be Percocet, it could be Adderall. It doesn't matter what you're on. We had a couple judges, and there was a representative out of Mass at one point. They got arrested because of the Ambien. Right, when that Ambien craze was going on and everyone was taking it, not knowing it causes you to kind of get into this fugue state, which basically is you're sleepwalking and don't know it. And so people got arrested for testing positive for Ambien as a result of an accident. I think that's how it should be.
For driving while on Ambien, quite honestly.
Yeah. But so it should be that standard to the extent your normal faculties are impaired, and let the jury determine whether or not someone is impaired or not. I know that nanoliter limit for cannabis and driving has been kind of challenged in states across the country, thrown out, shown unworkable. We had one cop tell a patient that, well, if you're a medical marijuana patient, you're always under the influence, and then proceeded to arrest her for a DUI.
We had a case here several years ago in Vegas where this woman drove off the road into a bus stop, killed like 5 people. So the cops came to our lab and wanted us to determine whether or not she was high or not based on blood levels and everything else that was going on. But all they did was they focused on cannabis, right? And because cannabis was kind of new to Nevada, and all of a sudden, these poor folks were killed. And it didn't mention the 7 opiates that were in her blood, right? And she had like 19 drugs, and cannabis just happened to be one of them. And it's funny that the news media was really focused on the cannabis, but we debunked it. And We told them that the amount of cannabis that was found in her blood was not enough to cause impairment.
It was an article, I think, out of the UK years ago, and it was about, like, in the future that potentially, because of the things that you stated, that people should actually get, a discount on their insurance for using cannabis. Kind of like a spoof article, but it made a lot of good points in that they drive safer, less aggressive, leave more distance between vehicles, and may forget to stop and go for it on the stop sign once it turns green. So
now, once the insurance companies start reimbursing for cannabis, then I think everything changes.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm totally in agreement with that. Once the insurance companies flip the switch, the whole thing switches for everybody. Yeah. Any final thoughts on this, Jenny Beth, before we go to our final commercial?
Ma'am, we're making great time today.
All right, we are going to roll to our final commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Must be the good-looking coat.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
That's for sure, without a doubt. Oh, and we are, guys. Yes, and I'm going to roll into our final two stories of the day today, you guys. And my second story was a little bit longer, and so I went and I tried to do the summary on it. Okay, Jenny.
Good job, Jason.
Yeah, what I'm saying. We're getting there. We're getting there. So let's see. Yes.
Good time.
Oh, where are you? Where are you, story? Maybe I have it right here. Oh, here we go. Sorry, guys. Here we go. All right, you guys. The DC cracks down on rogue weed shops, reshaping the cannabis market. You guys, that's right. Reggae music spilled out from Orbit DC in Northwest Washington storefront as police arrived with a riot shields and a battering ram in a recent noontime raid. Officers seized nearly 2 pounds of marijuana, THC edibles, mushroom edibles, and arrested one employee. The Adams Morgan shop was the 50th unlicensed cannabis store shuttered by DC's Cannabis Administration, the ABCA, since September, with 20 more closing voluntarily. A decade after DC voters decriminalized marijuana, the city's cannabis market has been split between licensed medical dispensaries and unregulated gifting shops, which skirted adult use sales bans by offering pot as a gift with a purchase like t-shirts. Now facing complaints from licensed operators, DC is intensifying efforts to regulate the market, targeting unlicensed shops that threaten legal businesses and pose public health risks with untested products, some reportedly laced with amphetamines. In a quote, "The goal is a legal, fair cannabis market," said ABCA Director Fred Muzzali outside Orbit, DC, as police taped off the entrance to the door. The agency estimates 20 to 30 unlicensed shops remain and draining revenue from dispensaries whose sales jumped from 2.5 million in February to 3.5 million in March alone. The crackdown is transforming DC's weed scene. Unlicensed shops like Buds and Roses and Trippy Wizard are vanishing, leaving darkened storefronts, and licensed dispensaries like Washington Hydro and Adams Morgan report raising sales. And owner John Kennedy, who transitioned from gifting to a licensed model, expect to gross $70,000 in April, up from prior months. The enforcement is working, he said. But the raids aren't without controversy. And even licensed shops like Green Theory face scrutiny from federal law. Violations such as operating near schools. Jacoby Whitley, an attorney for an unlicensed retailers, argues the crackdown fuels the underground market and hurts businesses that leased vacant properties during COVID. These shops added vibrancy, he said. And Norbert Pickett, a former licensed dispensary owner, sold his business after unregulated competitors undercut him. He says, "They ran me out," he said. His company joined the Alliance of Legal Cannabis Entities, DC, which filed lawsuits seeking $64 million from 277 defendants, including landlords, for supporting illegal shops. DC's rogue shop boom stems partly from Congress, where Representative Andy Harris, Republican from Maryland, blocked funding for an adult use market. This left a gray market of gifting shops, which ABCA, now with expanded authority from 2024 emergency legislation, is targeting. And raids have netted significant hauls like 36 pounds of weed and drugs at Nomad Smoke Shop. And while licensed dispensaries cheer the enforcement, advocates like Adam Edinger warn of higher prices and barriers for new entrepreneurs as DC tightens control. The underground market may thrive, leaving the city's cannabis future hazy. Well, let me just say this first of all, Adam Edinger. I mean, you are the captain of the clown show in DC, buddy. You should not be speaking in regards to this, in my opinion. This guy super frustrates me, just mainly because of the fact that he will get all these advocates all riled up. He's one of the ones that led the whole charge to go and smoke weed inside of Jeff Sessions' office when he was still a senator, which sparked that whole thing during Trump's first term. And so this is not the person that needs to be representing the industry, in my opinion. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
I think the whole DC scene is jacked up, honestly. It's legal, it's not legal. Doesn't like it, he doesn't like it. The people like it, they don't like it. It's just a mess.
I mean, yeah. But go ahead, Michael.
I was going to say, we had in one of our ballot initiatives that we ran the share aspect of it. I thought it was great for adults to be able to share, and I think it's crazy how it got that out of control in DC. But it's exactly that. You don't, like New York, you don't create clear regulations and give people the opportunity to get into businesses, and you create loopholes like this, of course they're going to expose it.
Very, very true. I mean, DC is such a fantastic place, and they started with having medical shops and whatnot, and then having just a few or whatnot, and then like they said during COVID is when they kind of like decriminalized a lot of it and allowed for a lot of changes to happen, and then all these vacant storefronts and these stores popped up out of nowhere because landlords need tenants, and that's just kind of how economies work, and now they're facing a similar uncertainty similar to New York. You're very right about that, Michael. It's a crazy thing, but it mentions in here too about the scrutiny that a legal shop faced in regards to its location to a school, and I have been in touch with people associated with that office. And there is no plans of any type of enforcement on that. So I want to make sure that is a story that we previously covered on High at Night News. And so I just want to make sure that people know that this is not all of a sudden some Trump war on weed. And so that is not the case at all whatsoever. This is all happening by locals who have the authority to go down and close these unlicensed stores.
Oh, it took 54 minutes for you to bring up your Lord and Savior. That was interesting.
I'm glad that you had a timer for that. I'm glad you had a timer for that, Todd.
Oh, my Trump alert just went off.
Day
I
6
bet.
incident.
Uh-huh.
Someone needs everybody needs a little red knowledge.
Yeah. You know, just a little red pill here and there, Todd. You know what I'm saying? For you.
Oh boy, Jason.
Little truth.
Oh well, DC's a mess, huh? But at least they're getting the NFL draft in 2027.
Oh yeah, they
There you
are.
go. Great as that.
Yes. That's right. The Redskins are
$5 to
coming.
get him a cup of coffee.
Oh man, you guys are funny. You guys are super funny. All right. Well, I'm gonna we'll roll. In the essence of time, we'll roll into my final story of the day. I got it's a much shorter story.
Darn.
Yeah. Sorry, Todd. Because a Nebraska bill would criminalize hemp-based THC. And opponents say it could make a grandma a felon, you guys. Kind Life Dispensary has been offering cannabinoid gummies, tinctures, ointments, and now even canned beverages for 7 years as one of the first businesses in Nebraska to offer such products. Founder and co-owner Andrea Watkins said her venture has been widely successful, and she has now 3 locations in Nebraska's capital city that employ 8 people and sell to hundreds of regulators who use the products to treat everything from aches and pains to anxiety and post-traumatic stress disorder. But now she's worried her livelihood will crumble as a bill winding its way through the Nebraska legislature would outlaw most of the products she sells. The Nebraska bill would criminalize the sale and possession of an array of products containing hemp-based THC, the same compound that gives marijuana its psychoactive properties. Any product containing more than total weight of 0.3 THC is more than 10 milligrams total per package would be outlawed, they say. In a quote, "If that bill becomes law, we would have to close," Watkins said recently at her flagship store that looks like a cross between a pharmacy and a spa. She suspects many of the more than 300 businesses across the state offering similar products since hemp was legalized under the 2018 Farm Bill could face the same fate, and the Farm Bill created a legal loophole, I don't buy that one for a second, you guys, that allows manufacturers to sell synthesized THC from hemp plants and sell it in products where marijuana isn't legal to sell. Oh, you guys are funny. As the bill currently is written, it would even ban topical products like THC containing lotions and creams intended to dull joint and muscle pains, leading opponents to accuse the bill's sponsors of making criminals of grandparents seeking a treatment for arthritis. A quote, they say, "What happens to all the grannies who have some kind of CBD with Delta 8 in the back of their medicine cabinet?" Omaha Senator Wendy DeBoer asked during a recent debate
to El Salvador.
Oh, easy there. Adding that the bill would, in quote, "make felons of all the grannies using products with hemp-based THC for aching joints." The Nebraska bill includes a grace period, though, the end of 2025 to allow people who have such products to dispose of them. And Republican lawmakers behind Nebraska's bill say it's needed to protect people, especially children, from dangerous products that use synthetic cannabinoids masquerading as hemp are infused to food and drink with candy and fruit flavors, and several lawmakers relayed accounts of children and others suffering ill effects and even hospitalization after consuming products containing synthesized THC. But those amounts to scare tactics that miscategorize the benefits of the product, said Dr. Andrea Holmes, an expert in organic chemistry with an emphasis in cannabis. Holmes is a co-owner of Kind Life Dispensaries and has traveled the country promoting regulated cannabis and cannabinoid products. And in a quote, they say, "What they have out there in these cases they talk about is that the person has also taken some other substances or has some underlying problem that leads to their condition," Holmes said. "Our products aren't dangerous," they say. Opponents of the bill say it's part of a years-long effort by state Republicans, including Nebraska Attorney General Mike Hilgers, to criminalize hemp products and thwart growing efforts to legalize marijuana both in Nebraska and across the country. And dozens of states have legalized marijuana for medical and adult use purposes. And in November, voters in Nebraska overwhelmingly approved medical marijuana use. In a quote, they say, "We need to look at the fact that most people want these types of products," Holmes said. So far, Nebraska lawmakers have rejected efforts by Omaha State Senator John Kavanaugh, a Democrat, to support the ban with a bill with a measure that would require strict regulation of hemp-based consumables, as several of other states have done. And the Nebraska Hemp Industries Association supports Kavanaugh's effort to regulate the industry. Kavanaugh and supporters to his measure say banning hemp products at a time when the state is suffering dramatic revenue shortfalls would just hit state coffers harder. And hemp-derived cannabinoid businesses employ more than 1,600 people in Nebraska and provide a tax revenue potential of nearly $8 million to the state. Kavanaugh said, citing figures from the 2023 U.S. National Cannabinoid Report, and despite the criminalization of hemp and voters' approval of some marijuana use, Hilgers has been crisscrossing the states, targeting businesses that sell hemp-based cannabinoid products, and many shops have received cease and desist letters. Some have been subject to raids by law enforcement, and Hilgers insists he is protecting the public from dangerous products and unscrupulous dealers trading in plain sight, he says. In a final quote, he says, "With our new complaints, we are ramping up our efforts to clean up Nebraska," Hilgers said in September when he sued 4 businesses in Norfolk selling hemp-based consumables. "These stores are misleading Nebraskans, and not one of these products we tested were accurately labeled, and many contained controlled substances." Nebraska is far from alone in the push to restrict access to consumable hemp and other THC products, and it joins a slew of other states where similar efforts to regulate, criminalize, or ban such products, including Alabama, Florida, Tennessee, and Texas. But Democratic-led states have also led efforts to restrict hemp-derived products. In California, where adult-use cannabis is legal and heavily regulated and taxed and overtaxed, regulators issued a ban last year on food and beverage products with hemp-derived THC, citing health concerns as well. Well, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this, and all I have to say is just weed for the people, you guys.
I think until hemp-derived products are treated exactly like cannabis products, there's always going to be a problem.
Yep.
I don't know what the problem is, why they just don't see that it should all be the same. But it solves all of these issues. Now, it puts more work on the cannabis regulators, but so what?
So many thoughts about this.
I'll go for it, Michael.
So, number one, it's amazing that these states are actually trying to criminalize these products that are federally no longer controlled substances. So I really like to see the challenges related to those issues. And the Farm Bill has been interpreted basically 2 different ways. But these are non-controlled substances that states are not allowed to interfere with the interstate commerce of. Plain language of the federal Farm Bill. So even if they can't, and they may be able to prevent it from being sold in retail stores in the state, I see a huge problem with them turning around and arresting a grandma from buying cream from a state that sells legal hemp products that is then shipped in interstate commerce directly from that company in another state to that individual, and now they become a criminal for getting a federally legal product. I have really huge issues with that. Especially with everything that's going on in the hemp space. And to me, this is an FDA issue. The FDA was tasked with creating rules and regulations for these products through the federal Farm Bill, and they have sat on their hands for the last, when did wonderful Trump pass the Farm Bill? 2018? Yes. They've been sitting on their hands since then, despite the push from legislators for them to act. And that's what's caused this hodgepodge of different states being able to do whatever they want regarding the hemp industry. And I don't think that was ever the intent of the federal Farm Bill. And I think things like this really create an issue of federal versus state law and whether or not these states can ban the possession of otherwise legal, federally legal hemp products.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think it's totally ridiculous that states are banning these products. And Todd, I somewhat do agree with you that they should all be treated the same. But the problem with that is that if they did treat them all the same, then all of a sudden all of these states are going to lose this cash cow of revenue that they have been milking for so long. And ultimately there's not going to be any value in a regulated cannabis license because it all ultimately should be treated as hemp and just as a nutraceutical and over the counter.
I suppose you could look at it that way, but I'm seeing it the other way, right? If the cannabis retailer and grower and producer have to go through all of the scrutiny of the state to get a special approved license in order to do that, I believe the hemp dudes should have to do that also, especially if they are converting and altering the hemp products. So it just makes total sense.
Well, I mean, I would think that you would advocate for just sensible testing methods, you know what I mean, and leave it at that. I'm surprised, Todd.
I would advocate for sensible testing, but sensible testing is included in good regulation, right?
What are you going to say, Michael?
Yeah, and I was going to say, and again, that's exactly the point of the FDA federally controlling it to create those types of regulations, which they have the full authority to do, to prevent this state-by-state hodgepodge of bullshit that is going to just hurt patients and people. And that's the bottom line. And on the other side is, you're exactly right. I think this hemp explosion shows, exactly what Jason was saying, that this should be a legal product and a descheduled product. Forget this rescheduling. Hemp is not a controlled substance. And, in this state, we have the fear mongering with the children as well. The majority of stores, besides the gas stations that they're allowing to sell it, all the smoke shops and hemp CBD shops are 21 plus. Kids are not getting it from going into stores and buying it, except maybe that vape thing yesterday. They're getting it from their parents leaving it around, or them finding it or getting it on the black market. I don't think they're buying it from these stores. And law enforcement can easily do the same thing they do with alcohol, is do the undercover buy bust operations to stop actors from doing it. And like in Florida, they require, I think it's under 30 or 35, they're supposed to ID. If the person looks under 35, they're supposed to ID for alcohol. So it's all fear-mongering for a plant that one DEA judge at one point said was the safest therapeutic substance known to man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Were discovered today in the Amazon, it would be considered a panacea, and whoever discovered it would win the Nobel Peace.
Right.
Yep. I agree with that. What do you think? What are your final thoughts on this, Jenny Beth?
I'm just sick of beating this drum. I mean, obviously Nebraska is not a forward-thinking place, but I mean, parity between the two industries, and then we'll figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Fair enough. Well, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout outs to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to Cloud Media Partners, Anthony, out there in the metaverse holding it down. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.